StraightallDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. But then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques underneath the umbrella of a unified philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is, are billionaires, quote unquote billionaires, keeping everyone poor? This is a question that we are going to address. Now, this is a concept that, depending on how old you are, actually it doesn't even matter how old you are, all of you have heard people tell you this, whether it has been a left-leaning politician, whether it was your own parents, which I fit that description, whether it was a teacher you learned it from at school, whether it was a friend of yours. You have probably heard somebody say something along these lines, that billionaires or the rich or corporations, or I don't know, people say millionaires, let's just say billionaires. So billionaires, and I'm using air quotes verbally when I say that. I'm not going to do it physically every time I say it. The rich, air quotes, and corporations, also in air quotes. These are the big bad wolves of industry and of the economy that are allegedly the reason why other people are not able to get ahead financially. And again, you have heard this concept being pushed for many decades. I remember back in the 90s asking my mother, because both of my parents would always vote in every election, are we Democrats or Republicans? My mom said Democrats, and I asked why. She said because Republicans only work for the rich people. So this is something that people going back, again, 30, 50, 60 years have always believed long before I was around. This chorus has only grown louder ever since Donald Trump, who is a noted billionaire, has re-entered the White House, along with bringing his friend Elon Musk, another noted billionaire, into his current administration. So it creates an easy boogeyman for politicians to hold up to everyone else as the enemy against anyone who is not a billionaire. And the reason that you're not a billionaire, the reason you may be struggling financially and you can't afford eggs and you can't pay your rent, is because of these rich people. They're the ones who are the enemy. This is a very convenient straw man to set up. And by telling you that, I already tipped my hand to you of where I'm going to go with this, but please hear me out so you understand where I'm coming from and why. This is a very convenient straw man to set up because there are always fewer billionaires, quote unquote, or rich, quote unquote, than there is everybody else, the average, the poor, and people who ain't billionaires. So it's very easy to set up an us versus them dynamic because the us becomes a whole lot more people than the them. And so you always have the numbers on your side. That's why this is a convenient argument that has been being used for, as I already explained to you, decades politically. This is not a new argument. It's not a new phenomenon. Any of you who think is new, it's far from new. And today we're going to talk about it in some ways that maybe some others have, but I'm going to talk about it better than any of them have up to this point. Because politicians are very good at leveraging this aspect of human nature, this us versus them. Look for someone to blame for your circumstance rather than looking at yourself. And this is one of the reasons why when I do my live streams, which I do at 8 a.m. Monday through Friday, any of you, 8 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, so any of you want to check them, the funnest place I think would be to check them is to watch it on TikTok live, simply because you can see the comments coming in. And I do actively, after I go through my material, I will engage with people in the comments, even those who disagree with me, which is, there's always a good amount of them, and on all the other platforms too. But you can see the live streaming commentary on TikTok where it is the most activity. But anyway, when I talk on there, sometimes someone says to me, Dre, you should be a politician. People who actually like what I'm saying, you should get into politics. And one of the reasons why I would not get into politics is because of the frame from which I speak. The frame from which I speak, those of you who are familiar with my work, you're not new around here, you know, my frame is personal accountability. All right, taking ownership of your situation, even if it's not your fault, it's your responsibility. Some people criticize it by saying, oh, you're all on that pull yourself up by the bootstraps thing. And I'm like, hell fucking yeah, I'm about that. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps, if that's what you want to call it. But take ownership of your situation and stop looking for someone or something else to fix your problems. Even if you didn't create the problem, you still got to solve it because it's still yours. And there's no politician in the world who can successfully win an election talking like that. You can't name one. So this is one of 100 reasons why I would never get involved in politics. But politicians, they don't have this frame. So they're very good at leveraging this aspect of human nature, looking for someone else to blame for your circumstance rather than looking at yourself, which is why we got to talk about this today. I will say before I get to our points, I do believe some politicians are of the same frame of thinking as I am. They're just good at turning the switch off when they got to go talk to the public and then turning it back on when they get away from the microphones. But I don't want to do that. I'd rather just be authentic all the time. But hey, to each their own. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, is are billionaires keeping everyone else poor? Number one, human nature. All right, the reason why this is even a question is because of human nature, which I just touched on in the introduction. It is human nature for a human being, the average human being, to look for something or someone to blame for their situation rather than taking responsibility and ownership of their situation. This is the reason why many people have no power and influence over their own circumstances, because they refuse to take what is required to get power and influence, which is responsibility and ownership. It's the reason why many people can't change their circumstances, even though they claim they want to. Taking responsibility for your situation does not mean that you, as I already explained, caused it or made it to be what it is. It's often not the case. You didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose when to be born. You didn't choose to be from the ghetto. You didn't choose your size. You didn't choose your genetics. You didn't choose any of these things, but they all are part of your situation. And if you want to have power in life, you must take ownership of the circumstance, and that puts you in a position to do something about it. Anything you don't take ownership of, you are not really in position to change it because you're not owning it. So whoever owns it controls it. That's the way it works. And if you do not have power over your situation, that means you become a victim of your circumstances rather than a creator of your circumstance. And again, if I asked any person, would you rather be a victim of your circumstance or a creator of your circumstance? Most people would say they want to be a creator. The problem is most people do not behave in a way as if they even understand the costs of being a creator. Remember, the third law of economics, ladies and gentlemen, is that there are no free lunches. Anything that you want in life, there is a cost to be paid for it. And if you want to have influence over your circumstance, you must take ownership over that circumstance, even when you didn't cause the circumstance to be what the circumstance is. As I already explained to you, no politician will ever tell you something like this because it would render them effectively irrelevant. Because as soon as you start telling people in your audience that you are not going to solve their problems, but you're going to preach to them about how they need to solve their own problems, most of them are not going to vote for you anymore. That's just what it is. So instead, what you do is you tell your constituents the opposite, that your problems are not your fault, that you just need to listen to me, the politician, and I will solve everything. Every successful politician uses this frame, by the way. So this is a bipartisan point. Every Republican uses it. Every Democrat uses it. Anyone who has won an election uses this. You can't name a single person who's won an election not using that frame, because you must use that frame. And if you don't use it, your opponent is going to use it against you. And they'll be more effective, and then they're going to beat you. So therefore, you can't win an election. So this is a common marketing tool. All marketers use this. Again, it doesn't even have to be in politics. It is common. It is as common as it is because it works. Okay, that's why this is very popular, because it works. So I'm not even knocking this so much as I'm pointing it out, because I just want you to I want you to be careful when people are using it on you, because I guarantee you people use this on you and you may not even notice that they're doing it. I will even use it sometimes in the sales space, and not even me so much, because my frame is my frame and I talk the way that I talk, but I know marketers who use this, and I even encourage certain marketers, depending on what you're selling, to use this. I am telling you, as human nature, I'm telling you that this gives people an out clause, and I'm telling you that there are times when you should use this, because if you tell people the reason that you are out of shape is because the reason you're out of shape is because you're fat, you're lazy. Well, not you're fat. We know you're fat. You're lazy. You're undisciplined. You keep procrastinating, and you know the gym is 3 blocks away, and your lazy ass won't go to the gym. That's the reason you're in the position that you're in. All right, that's the truth, and everyone knows that's the truth. But if you're selling a diet program on your website, you can't tell people that, because why would anybody need to buy your diet program? All they got to do is the opposite of everything that you just told them. But here's what you do. If you need to sell that diet program, you say, well, listen, I understand that you're not in the shape that you want to be in. I understand that this has been a pressing problem for you a long time. And I understand that the last 4 diet programs that you signed up for, you did not create any difference from those situations. But you know what I'm not going to tell you, Mr. Prospect? It's not because you simply didn't follow the fucking instructions of those last programs that you were on. It's not because you are too lazy to go to the gym that is right around the corner. It's not because you are so undisciplined. You set your alarm for 5 a.m. to get that hour workout in, but you keep waking up at 6:30 because you just want to get an extra 15 minutes, quote unquote, of sleep. None of those are the real reason why you're out of shape. You're out of shape because those last programs just weren't the right program. They didn't motivate you the right way. They didn't tell you the right things. They didn't give you the right steps. They didn't have the secret formula that's in my program. And if you just sign up for my program, you can eliminate the problems of all those other programs, and my program is going to be the magic pill that solves everything for you. Now, is that actually true? Well, it could be true. See, this is the reason why this person is not lying. It's not false advertising, because if someone who is disciplined and someone who will not procrastinate and someone who actually follows instructions gets on this person's diet program, guess what's going to happen? They're going to lose weight. Why? Because people who follow the program will lose weight. I could sell a diet program if you just do what I said. Here's my diet program. Page 1. All right, watch what the hell you eat and watch what the hell you drink. Page 2. Get up and go to the fucking gym. All right, there we go. The end. All right, if you follow that, I can sell you a diet program. All right, anyone can sell a diet program. All right, it doesn't matter what's in the program. But see, you got to put all the bells and whistles and the fancy stuff around it to make people feel like you're giving them something that they haven't gotten before. The thing is, if you want to sell it, you must do this. See, if you don't want to sell it, then you sell my programs. And my program will never sell. Nobody will buy my program because my program sounds too much like self-accountability. But if you're going to sell someone magic beans, you got to make sure they believe that it's magic. And again, it's not that the magic beans can't grow a beanstalk. They can grow a beanstalk if you do the same thing that anyone else who's disciplined would do. The problem is the people who are behind those programs don't have discipline. That's the reason why they're on their 30th training program when the last 29 all would help them be successful if they would just do what the program said to do. Most people, what I tell you, 3 truths about human beings, always burn these into your head. I've said them so many times. Most people are lazy, they don't think, and they don't read. Sometimes I say them in different order, but these 3 truths are always true about the average human being. People do not read, they don't think, and they're fucking lazy. So if you want to move someone to support you or go along with whatever it is that you're doing, you have to tell them that, number 1, they don't have to think. They can just let you decide for them. Number 2, they don't have to read. You're going to make it really, really super understandable for them. They don't have to use any brain power. And number 3, it doesn't take any effort. It's going to be super, super easy. Just push this button and everything's going to happen. Again, the magic beans. All right, there's a reason why most marketing sounds like this. If you really pay attention, any of you who's a student of marketing or sales, you understand it's really the marketing. The sales is the next step after marketing. But most marketing sounds like this because most marketing is targeted at a mass audience of people. And if you're talking to a mass audience, you cannot make it sound like it takes effort or energy or time or discipline. Why? Because most people ain't interested in any of those things. Do you understand? So follow this weight loss program. You're going to lose the 50 pounds you've been trying to lose for the last 10 years, even though my program, 89% of it is the same as every other program that you haven't gotten the result from, because not because there's anything different about my program. The thing that needs to change is you, not the program. But again, you can't sell anything talking to people like that. You cannot win a political election talking to people like that. Again, this is the reason why I have this show and I don't have a political office. On a logical level, what I'm just explaining to you, and this is the things that marketers have to do on some level, this is bullshit. All right, you didn't lose weight because you didn't work. All right, your last diet didn't work because you didn't work. All right, the last business you tried didn't work because you didn't work, possibly. Again, it gets more complicated when we get into other things, but I'm using weight loss as a simple example because everyone understands it. All right, people use this because it works. Okay, so billionaires are the reason you're poor is bullshit, but does it work to convince people? Yes, it does. Point number 2, today's topic, once again, are billionaires keeping everyone poor? Number 2, again, as I explained in the intro, these people are easy scapegoats. It's easy to scapegoat when there's only a few who are being scapegoated, and then there's a whole lot of people, a mass of people who feel like they're the victims, and these people also have no personal accountability. They don't think, they don't read, and they're lazy. This is the perfect formula. This is the reason why politics has looked exactly the same for the last 60 years, because politicians, all they have to do is follow the playbook. It works. The playbook works. Okay, it's very easy to scapegoat someone who has achieved more than others and then hold the achiever up as the quote unquote bad guy for the other people who seemingly cannot understand how there is such a big gap in outcome between them and another mere mortal human being, the successful person who's up there ahead of them, when all of them are dealing with the exact same circumstance in the same place at the same time with the same tools. How is it this person's so far ahead of everybody else? You notice that people often come up with some rationalization for this. In sports, for example, people will say, all right, why is this, a player is looking at other player and this player is way better than you. You'll say, well, that player just has more talent than me. That's one of the common ones. This player is just more talented than me. And sometimes the player is more talented than you, but oftentimes it's not really the talent that's making that much of a difference. Yes, that player does have talent. Yes, this player has talent and maybe they have more talent than you, but the gap between you and them ain't as big as the gap between their talent and your talent. The actual gap is the fact that they actually show up to the gym and do their job and train every day, and you don't. All right, that's the real gap. The gap is not talent. The gap is a decision known as discipline to show up every day and do your damn job. I wrote a whole book about it called The Third Day. You can get it at thirddaybook.com. That's the real gap. Or in another space, a student. Back in the days when I was in school, I don't know how students do it these days. If there's a student who's not doing so well in school and they have the same assignment as the students around them, but the students around them are getting the assignment done and you're not, you ask the student why you're not getting it done. They say, well, everybody else in the class is smarter than me. Bullshit. And it's scary sometimes. You'll see a kid in the 4th grade or the 6th grade saying something like that. Where'd you learn that? I remember I was working with a mentoring program for young men several years ago, maybe about 10 or so years ago. And there was this exact thing happened. This kid was in the 7th grade. He wasn't doing his homework, and he wasn't doing his homework because he was fucking lazy. And he didn't have any discipline in his life at home that was making him do the homework. So he wasn't doing his homework. And I said, how is it that all the other kids in this program are doing their homework? You're not doing yours. And he said, well, they're smarter than me. And he knew that he was bullshitting, because when he said it, he looked at me to see if I was buying his bullshit. And I said, come on with the nonsense. But the thing is, this is what people come to accept these things as this is just the rationalization for why the situation is what it is. I remember when I was working at Bally Total Fitness. This is the summer of 2005. Bally Total Fitness is out of business now. Not because of me, though. I sold a whole lot of memberships for them. Or maybe because of me, because the way their contracts were structured, maybe that's one of the reasons why they went out of business. But anyway, I'm working at Bally Total Fitness, and I was the top salesperson that summer, the summer of 2005. And one of the reasons I was the top salesperson because I'm a good fucking salesperson. I know how to sell. I got a new book called The Sales Discipline System. If you haven't gotten it yet, go to salesdisciplinebook.com. But anyway, I had the best sales numbers, and any of you who's ever worked on a sales team knows that there's often some type of chart or board in which you can see all the sales numbers, who's leading, who's in first place, where everybody falls on the charts, the sales chart. Now, again, this is 2005, so these charts were not virtual. This was an actual chart right in the middle of the big phone room that we had, and everybody could see the chart, who's number 1, number 2, and the chart would get reorganized every single day based on the number of sales that had come in. I'm at the top of the chart and by a nice, healthy margin. And I remember one day we were in there sitting around, and also all the salespeople, we all joke around and play around. And I participated in that playing around, but at the same time, I did a good amount of selling. And one of the sales guys, a guy named Brian, he said he was looking at the sales chart one day, and he sees me up there, and he says, Dre, you only up there at the top of the chart because you here every day. And then everybody started laughing because usually we only work 5 days a week. And on some level, Brian was correct. I was there every day because I used the gym to exercise, because I was a gym member and I'm getting ready to play pro basketball. So I would use the gym to work out on days that I wasn't even scheduled to work. And sometimes on those days that I wasn't scheduled to work, I'd be in the gym working out, and I would run into a person who said, hey, I'll run into someone who I had signed up already. They're using the gym. I'm using the gym. They would say, hey, Dre, I have a friend who wants to join too. They would pass me information, and I would go close the sale on a day that I wasn't even supposed to be working. So that happened a couple times, and people would notice it. So then it needed to become, or what it did become for a lot of people, was a rationalization. Oh, the only reason this person's at the top of the chart is because he's always here working every day, and see, you don't have a life outside of this. So that's the reason why you're making more sales. No, bullshit. I'm making more sales. I'm just doing more work than you, period. It's not even that I'm doing the extra days of work. It's just the days that we're both there, I'm just outperforming you. But again, if anybody was to admit that, how many people do you know admit anything like that? Have you ever heard anybody talk like that? Of course, you never hear anyone talk like that because no one wants to admit that. People have that thought in their head, but they immediately replace it with what we call a rationalization. When you break down rationalization with rational lie. So rationalize means to rationally lie to yourself about what the situation actually is, because it makes you feel better. And it takes all the responsibility off of you. Well, hey, I don't want to work 7 days a week like Dre, so therefore there's no way I'm gonna hit his sales numbers. Yeah, you're probably right. Not for that reason though. So in all the personal and professional development I've consumed over the years, and I am sure that you have heard the familiar refrain that XYZ rich person has 24 hours in a day just like you. You've heard that before, right? People have been saying that for decades. But as the gap between those at the top and those at the bottom continue to expand over the years, and we're going to talk about why that happens in a moment, it seems that fewer and fewer people are open to hearing this type of logic. See, people don't want to hear Oprah has 24 hours in a day and you got 24 hours in a day, so there's no reason why you can't achieve the same outcomes as Oprah. Because many human beings, again, the bigger the gap that they see and the less possibilities they see in their own selves, the less open they are hearing something like this, that it's possible that they could, quote unquote, make it. The reality of the situation is human beings become who they are and end up in the places that they do based on their habits of thoughts and behavior. Oprah is Oprah not because she somehow magically finds a way to do more in 24 hours than you. It's not magic if she is doing more, or anybody else is doing more than anyone else. It's not magic. It starts in the mind with the way that you think. Then it goes to the things that you think are possible for yourself. Then it moves to your words, actions, and consistent behaviors, also known as your habits. All right. You become who you become based on what you consistently do. As Aristotle said, you are what you consistently do. And the reality of the situation is everyone ends up where they are based on their habits. This is not debatable. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer because rich people have rich habits that make them and keep them rich. Poor people have poor habits that make and keep them poor, which is why if a rich person had all their money taken away from them, they are technically at that moment what we would call broke. Broke is a financial state, poor is a way of thinking, and that person will become rich again. Good example, President Donald Trump. He was billions of dollars in debt. He was rich, then he was $1 billion in debt, and then he got back rich again. All right, he can go up, down, up. Why? Because of his mindset, not because of luck. And not because his dad gave him money. Another excuse that a lot of people say, well, this person's dad gave him money. Okay, well, how do you explain how the majority of millionaires and billionaires in the United States of America are all first generation? The majority, more than half of all millionaires and billionaires in the United States of America are first generation. That is a statistical fact. And the poor get poorer because poor people have poor habits. They have poor habits of thought. They have poor habits of speech. They have poor habits of action. That's why they're poor. And often their poor mindset was passed down to them by some poor people who came before them and the poor people that they hang around and talk to every day. And it's easier to become poor than it is to become rich. Why? Because to become poor, you don't have to do anything. You become poor by default. Why? The law of inertia. Object in motion tends to remain in motion. Object not in motion tends to remain not in motion until or unless acted upon by an outside force. It takes more energy to build momentum than it does to allow stagnation. Stagnation is allowed. Momentum is done intentionally. Combine that with the law of entropy, which states any object is always moving into a higher state of disorder and chaos, or descending into disorder and chaos. Descending, into disorder and chaos. Which means what? If you do nothing and you're not intentional about getting better, then by default, you get worse. This is a scientific law. This is the reason why there are a few people at the top of the pyramid and a whole bunch of people at the bottom, because by default, you get worse. Most people live their lives by default. That's why the bottom of the pyramid is so crowded with so many people. If you start living by default, you immediately at least go up to the second level of the pyramid. You at least can get there. So the rich get richer and the poor get poorer because of their habits, not because anyone is doing to them or for them. For anyone to accept this, however, you also have to accept personal responsibility. That you are where you are because of the current habits you've had up to this point. The good news is you can change your habits as soon as you become aware of them. I talked about this in my book, Work on Your Game. You can get that one at workonyourgamebook.com. Your habits are your employees. They work for you. They are representing you out to the outside world. If you don't like your representation in the world, you need to check your habits and what is leading to that representation and make adjustments as necessary. Fire who needs to be fired, hire who needs to be hired, put people on probation, do what you had to do. The same thing you would if you had a person working for you. Would you just let them misrepresent you and not do anything about it? Okay, well, look at your habits. It's the same thing. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, are billionaires keeping everyone poor? Number 3, this is all political posturing, which you probably know. It starts with the politicians who are in the business of keeping their jobs and furthering their careers. I'm letting that thought sink in. Let me say it again. Politicians are in the business of keeping their jobs and furthering their careers. You thought politicians are in the business of helping you and serving the constituents who actually voted them in and who pay their salaries. That is not the business they're in. They're in the business of keeping their jobs. And whatever they got to do to keep their jobs, which is not serving you, whatever they got to do to keep their jobs, make it appear that they're serving you, even if they're not. That's the business that they're actually in. Because many of the politicians you know and can name, their entire professional careers have been played out in politics, meaning they have no other way to offer professional level skill to any other industry because they have no other skill. They have no other experience. So they need to keep their jobs in politics because what else are they going to do? They could not replicate the success. They couldn't make the same money business wise doing anything other than what they've been doing. So they need to keep their jobs. That's their number one priority. And if they can do that while pretending to be serving you, fine. If they happen to actually serve you too, great, that's great too. But it ain't the priority, in case any of you thought it was. The easiest way to keep their job and fund their careers is to make sure that the people who keep a politician in office, aka the voters, they believe that you are fighting the good fight to solve all their problems. And the easiest way to do this is to create a common enemy that everyone can fight against. When there's a common enemy, it's very easy to galvanize and motivate an audience of people. There is no common common enemy, then it's a little bit harder. It's still doable, but it's a little bit harder. The more enemies you can point out and the more distrust and negative energy you can stir up amongst your voters against these enemies, the more support you will have. The more elections you will win and the longer your career. And this is the reason why a whole bunch of Democratic politicians in the United States of America are very happy with the presence of Donald Trump. They're happy with the presence of Trump, even though they may feign to the cameras that they detest his presence. They're actually happy for his presence. Why? Because he represents a common enemy that a Democratic politician can galvanize their audience to get behind the Democrat politician to fight against Donald Trump, even though that politician is not really doing shit, but giving 25-hour speeches like Cory Booker and getting social media hits, just saying stuff to get a 2-minute viral clip. They're not actually doing anything. They're not doing anything tangible that's actually helping you, but they do these things that are performative that is enough for most people to feel satisfied. Again, I just told you, people don't think, they don't read, and they're lazy. This is the reason why social media is so popular. No one wants to read the book, but anybody will read a 1-paragraph excerpt that went viral out of the book. This is how people are. This is human nature. Social media just played to people's human nature. That's all it did. And politicians use social media because it plays to people's human nature. And the better you can play to people's human nature, the better politician you will be. And when I say better, what I mean is the more consistently you will be elected and in office. That's what I mean when I say better. Not necessarily that you're doing anything. A lot of politicians ain't doing shit, but we're paying them. This is all part of the political hustle. It's generally nonsense, but we cannot deny that it works. Again, I'm saying this over and over again. I'm telling you it's nonsense and I'm telling you it works at the same time. This is one of the main issues I have with American politics. Most politicians are just posturing to sustain their careers and to win their next election. They're not actually trying to help you, even though they claim that they're really trying to help you. It's been decades of politicians with these same concepts saying the same things. They just swap in different voices, different approaches, different enemies, all saying the same stuff. Has any of this actually worked? Y'all understand that for 60 years, politicians have been telling you that the reason why the average person is in the average person's position is because of rich people, billionaires, and the big corporations. Y'all understand that they've been telling y'all that for 60 years. Have they actually done anything to change the situation? The answer is no, and there's several reasons why no. Number one, it's not true. Number two, the reason you are where you are is not because of anything a politician said or did, but because of what you say and do. And as long as you are focused on them and what they're going to do for you, you will never fix the actual problem. So many people are just asking and answering the wrong question. And number three, you got to remember why politicians are doing this. That they're doing it to serve themselves and further their own careers. It's only you who doesn't know what the actual hustle is. That's why I'm telling you what it is. Cory Booker, the senator from Newark, New Jersey, he did a 25-hour speech breaking a record for standing on the Senate floor and talking. It wasn't even a filibuster. It was just he was just holding the Senate floor. 25 hours he did this. Question, what did this tangibly achieve? When I was asking this in my live stream that I recorded the day that I'm recording this, and people said, well, he stood up to Trump. I said, how can you stand up to someone who's not even there when you're standing up to them? So no, he didn't stand up to anybody. Number two, he started a conversation, someone else said. Starting a conversation is not a fucking accomplishment. I could start a conversation on Facebook. Did I accomplish something? No. It depends on who that conversation was with and what we were talking about and then what happens because of the conversation. And Cory Booker didn't do any of those things. But what he did do was he built his brand. He bolstered his brand. He made his name stand out amongst the quote unquote leaders of the Democratic Party, I guess, of today. Other than that, what else did he do? I can't name anything. He didn't do anything else. All he did was draw attention to himself. And again, you paid for it. That was on our dime. You pay taxes. That was on your dime and he did that. What's the outcome? Oh, he's standing up to the rich and the billionaires. Is he? How? Again, how is he standing up to them? What is he going to change based on that speech? The answer is nothing. That's the point. Let's recap today's class. Are billionaires, quote unquote, keeping everyone poor? Billionaires, the rich, big corporations, etc. Number one, first of all, this is a great question because it plays on human nature. It is human nature for a human being to look for something or someone to blame for their circumstances rather than taking responsibility. Politicians understand this in their bones and they build on it and they leverage it every single time they speak. Number two, you can make the smaller group easy scapegoats if there are a few at the top with success and the masses of people at the bottom who don't have success. This applies in every aspect of life. That's why it's very easy for the person at the top to get attacked much more often and much more openly simply because they are open, they're visible, and they're isolated. Number three, political posturing. Politicians are in the business of keeping their jobs and furthering their careers. They are not in the business of helping you. That's not their number one priority. Maybe they do want to help you, but that's not the number one priority. Whether you want to believe that or not about your favorite politician, it doesn't matter who you name. It applies to all of them, except the ones who do not need politics as a career. Anyone who needs politics as a career, and when I say need, what I mean is the only thing they've done professionally is be a politician, maybe and or a lawyer. These people need politics. They don't have anything else. So their priority is keeping their jobs, which means if they need to pretend that they're trying to help you while doing the things that actually keep their jobs, they will do it. This is the reason why you should not be dependent on a politician to do anything for you, because every time you do depend on them, you're probably going to end up being let down and disappointed. And secondly, it's your fault that you even put yourself in that position because your thinking is off. And that's the reason why I'm trying to check you on it right now. All that said, everybody, workonyourgameuniversity.com. You want to have Dre Baldwin as your direct coach. You want to get access to all of our trainings, all of our programs, and get on live conversations directly with me to work through what you're working on. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all